I give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of A3+, mainly Algeria, Guyana, Sierra Leone, and my own country, Somalia. We express our appreciation for the Presidency for promptly convening this meeting at the request of A3+, joined by China, Pakistan, and Russian Federation. I also want to welcome the participation of the representatives from the Arab League nations, the African Union, Djibouti, Kuwait, South Africa, Turkey, to this meeting. Mr. President, I also want to thank ASG Khalid Khiari for his briefings. Mr. President, A3+ strongly condemns the flagrant assault by Israel on the unity and the territorial integrity of Somalia by recognizing as an independent entity to the northwestern region of Somalia, so-called Somaliland, which is legally incapable of entering into any agreement or arrangement or recognition with another country. Any such purported arrangements are therefore null and void. Further, this action represents a direct violation of the UN Charter, the African Union's fundamental principles, and a breach of cornerstone of the international law. Respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the states. This act of aggression is aimed at encouraging fragmentation of the territory of Somalia, which is the northwestern region, is an integral part and is destabilizing the Horn of Africa, entire Horn of Africa, and the Red Sea region. It should be firmly rejected and condemned unequivocally by all member states. A3+ therefore rejects this announcement by Israel and calls for it to be rescinded. In this regard, A3+ aligns itself with the recent statements of the chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, in categorically rejecting all attempts at undermining the independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity of Somalia. A3+ reaffirms the long-standing and consistent position of the African Union, rooted firmly in the constitutive act of the Union and the principles of respecting borders inherited at independence, as proclaimed in 1964 decision of the Organization of African Unity, Cairo Declaration. We further call on all member states to take a unified and principled stand against this illegal action, which undermines the very foundation of the international legal order. A3+ seizes this opportunity to welcome all regional, international, bilateral and multilateral partners who express their clear support and the commitment to the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of Somalia. Mr. President, taking note of the statements made by some officials regarding the forced involuntary relocation of Palestinians from their homeland to other countries, A3+ unequivocally reject any steps aimed at advancing this objective, including any attempt by Israel to relocate the Palestinian population from Gaza to northwestern region of Somalia. This action is not only unlawful, but is morally reprehensible. Recalling the provisional measures and advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice regarding the forcible displacement of Palestinian people from their land, we call on Israel to comply with its legal obligations on this matter. A3+ will neither accept nor condone the illegal use of any territory, let alone that of sovereign state, which is a member of the United Nations, to deny the right of self-determination to a people who have been subjected to crimes against humanity for many, many years. Neither the future of the Palestinian people nor the territorial sovereignty of Somalia can be used as a bargaining chip. This utter disdain for law and morality must be stopped now. We further underscore our steadfast support for the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, including their right to self-determination and their right to their homeland in accordance with the two-state solution. Rather than contributing genuinely to the commendable international peace efforts in the Middle East through the long overdue recognition of independent, sovereign Palestinian state, Israel has instead chosen to project instability to the Horn of Africa, promote divisions and create new sources of tensions in the region already facing multidimensional and complex challenges. Mr. President, in closing, A3+ reiterates its unwavering commitment to the Somalis' unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. No external actor has the legitimacy or authority to alter the unity, the sovereignty, or territorial configuration of Somalia or any other sovereign state. Israel's action not only set a dangerous precedent, but also posed a serious threat to regional and international peace and security. A3+ calls again on the international community to uphold its responsibility under the United Nations Charter and to reject any act that undermines the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of Somalia or the rights of the Palestinian people through a manipulative and immoral actions. I thank you, Mr. President.
Give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. I thank ASG Chiari for briefing us. I will make 3 points. First, the United Kingdom reaffirms its support for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, political independence and unity of Somalia. The UK does not recognise Somaliland's independence. We maintain that any change to Somaliland's status depends on mutual agreement between Mogadishu and Hargeisa through dialogue and must conform to the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. We regret any action that risks undermining peace and security in the region. Second, we urge further efforts between the federal government of Somalia and the Somaliland authorities to address differences and work together to face common threats. Al-Shabaab and other terrorist organisations benefit from internal divisions in Somalia. We encourage Mogadishu and Hargeisa to pursue dialogue with the support of regional bodies and the international community to resolve these divisions. Third, we underscore the importance of continued international support to Somalia's security transition. Just this month, the Council renewed its authorisations for the African Union Support and Stabilisation Mission in Somalia, extended the provision of the UN logistical support to AWSOM through UNSOS, mandated a strong package of sanction measures to degrade Al-Shabaab. In September, the United Kingdom announced a contribution of over $30 million to support Somalia's security transition, including $22 million to AWSOM. As a close and long-standing partner of Somalia, we remain committed to supporting the federal government in its efforts to build a secure and stable Somalia. We urge greater international support to this end. In closing, President, the UK also welcomes the peaceful conduct of the local elections in Mogadishu and reaffirms its support for Somalia's democratic aspirations. We encourage all political actors to work together to reach consensus on next steps. Thank you.
I don't think I should lose this last opportunity under your presidency to congratulate you on your great management of the Council, and allow me to be brief. Our country continues to follow with concern the tension related to the 26 December decision taken by the government of Israel to recognize Somaliland as an independent and sovereign state. Panama would like to be very clear in our principled position. The Charter of the United Nations, respect for the sovereignty, political independence and territorial integrity of states constitute the basis of the international order. During this year, in which Panama has shared membership on the Security Council with Somalia, we have witnessed the complex challenges that the country faces, but also the progress achieved through dialogue, international support, and the commitment of
its institutions. In this,
we consider it essential to maintain the centrality of Somalia as a member state of the United Nations and preserve the existing multilateral framework. Mr. President, by their very nature, these matters require prudence, strict adherence to and respect for international law, and all peaceful solutions that are based on dialogue with the leadership of the actors directly involved and, above all, framed within regional and multilateral processes. President, in an international context characterized by multiple tension and simultaneous crises, this Council has the responsibility to reaffirm that changing territorial status should not result from fait accompli or unilateral recognitions. International peace and security are sustained when norms are applied in a consistent, coherent manner with the participation of the states concerned, in particular those relating to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states. Thank you very much.
To the representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I would like to commend Slovenia for its effective stewardship of the Council during the month of December. I also thank ASG Kerry for the informative briefing provided today. The Security Council adopted this month of 2 resolutions concerning Somalia, namely the extension of a mandate of the African Union Support and Civilization Mission and sanctions against Al-Shabaab. And these 2 resolutions reflects the international community's continued commitments to peace and security in Somalia. However, the recent diplomatic developments related to Somalia warrant close attention as they carry broader implications for regional stability and for the principles that underpin our collective efforts. In this context, we believe it is important to continue engaging with all relevant parties in a manner that respects sovereignty, support dialogue, and contribute to practical cooperation in addressing shared challenges. I'd like to make 3 points. First, the Republic of Korea reiterates its firm support for the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia, in accordance with the principles of the United Nations Charter. Our respect for Somalia's sovereignty necessarily entails full recognition of its internationally recognized borders, which remain essential to ensuring clarity, predictability, and stability in regional relations. Accordingly, we support the authority of the federal government of Somalia as exercised within its internationally recognized borders and in accordance with Somali Constitution. Second, we recognize the value of efforts aimed at strengthening bilateral and regional relations, including initiatives that promote dialogue and confidence building between Israel and its neighbors. However, we believe that such efforts, in order to be constructive and sustainable, must be pursued in full respect of the sovereignty of the state concerned and in a way that supports rather than undermines ongoing dialogues among Somali stakeholders. Third, we encourage relevant Somali stakeholders to actively engage in good faith dialogue to address different views related to governance arrangements and the exercise of authority, including questions concerning territorial integrity and respective roles of federal and regional institutions. As reflected in recently adopted Security Council resolutions, all Somali parties share responsibility for strengthening cooperation and engaging in discussions for the benefit of all Somalis. Coordinated efforts remain essential for fostering mutual understanding, strengthening national cohesion, and advancing an inclusive political process that supports Somali's national priorities. We also acknowledge the important role played by the UN and regional partners in supporting the peaceful resolution of disputes related to Somalia and promoting its peace and stability. Mr. President, as our term on the Security Council comes to an end, this may be our final interventions in this chamber. Nevertheless, the Republic of Korea's commitment to peace, stability, and security in Somalia and beyond remains unwavering. We will continue to support the work of the UN and its partners in advancing these shared objectives. In this spirit, we again extend our best wishes to the incoming members of the Security Council, Bahrain, Colombia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Latvia, and Liberia, as they assume their important responsibilities. I thank you.
Give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Assistant Secretary General Chiari, for your briefing. Colleagues, meetings such as today's distract from serious work to address issues of international peace and security, including in both the Middle East and the Horn of Africa. On the matter of Somaliland, we have no announcement to make regarding U.S. recognition of Somaliland, and there has been no change in American policy. Thank you.
I thank the
Denmark welcomes the opportunity for the Security Council to address the recent announcement by Israel regarding the unilateral recognition of Somaliland. I thank ASG Chiari for his briefing on this matter. Denmark is concerned by the potential implications of this development for peace, stability, and the territorial integrity of Somalia and the broader Horn of Africa region. Denmark aligns itself with the statement issued by the European Union on 27 December, which reaffirms the importance of respecting the unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia, as is enshrined in its constitution and in accordance with the charters of the African Union and the United Nations. Such respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity is fundamental to maintain peace and security throughout the region. We note the widespread concerns raised by regional and international partners over the risk of unilateral actions that affect Somalia's institutional order, of setting a dangerous precedent that may exacerbate tensions rather than contribute to constructive solutions. Denmark underscores the urgent need for the resumption of meaningful dialogue between Somaliland and the federal government of Somalia. We believe that long-standing differences can only be addressed through sustained and inclusive political engagement. Any resolution of the international legal status of Somaliland be clarified through Somali-led dialogue and within the framework of Somalia's legal and constitutional order. The international community must support processes that encourage consensus, reconciliation, and constructive outcomes for the people of Somalia. In this context, Denmark calls upon all parties to refrain from actions or rhetoric that might fuel regional tensions. Mr. President, Denmark reaffirms its commitment to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of sovereign states, to the principles of the UN and AU charters, and to peaceful diplomatic engagement as the basis for resolving disputes. We stand ready to work with partners in this Council and beyond to support peace, security and stability in Somalia and the wider region. I thank you.
The representative of Denmark for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Greece.
President, I thank you for convening this meeting. China fully supports the request by Somalia, Algeria, Sierra Leone, and Guyana for an emergency council meeting. I thank SG Chiari for the briefing. On December 26, Israel announced its formal recognition of Somaliland as a so-called independent sovereign state and established full diplomatic relations with it. This has further increased tensions in the Horn of Africa, drawing immediate and strong criticism and condemnations from regional organizations including the AU Arab League, GCC, OIC, and IGAD, as well as many regional countries. China also expresses grave concern over this move and firmly opposes it. Respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity is a fundamental principle of the UN Charter and an unshakable cornerstone of international law and international relations, which all UN member states must strictly observe. Somaliland is an inalienable part of Somali territory. China firmly supports Somalia's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity and opposes any act to split its territory. China has always maintained that the Somaliland issue is entirely Somalia's internal affairs. It should be resolved by the Somali people in a way consistent with the national conditions and the Constitution. Non-regional countries should cease unwarranted interference. No country should aid and abet separatist forces in other countries to further their own geopolitical interests. We urge the relevant country to act responsibly, strictly observe the UN Charter and international law, heed the call of the international community, immediately rectify its erroneous act, and eliminate the negative effects as soon as possible. We urge the Somaliland authorities to grasp the situation, immediately stop separatist activities and collusion with external forces, and return to the track of dialogue with the federal government of Somalia as soon as possible to avoid further threatening regional peace and stability and opening the door to more tensions and conflicts. President, Somalia is at a critical juncture in its political and security transition. The international community should assist the country in strengthening counterterrorism capabilities, advancing political dialogue, and promoting national unity. As a good friend of Somalia and regional countries, China will continue to firmly support Somalia's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity, uphold fairness and justice, and together with the international community, worked harder for the peace, stability, development, and prosperity in Somalia and in the region. Thank you, President.
At the outset, Greece wishes to underscore the fundamental importance of respect for international law and the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter. In view of the latest developments regarding the Federal Republic of Somalia, Greece expresses its grave concern and stresses the need to respect the unity, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of the state in accordance with the UN Charter as well as of the Charter of the African Union. In this context, we recall that Security Council resolutions on Somalia adopted under Chapter 7 of the Charter, including most recently Resolution 2809 of 2025, explicitly reaffirm for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, political independence, and unity of Somalia. Any actions contrary to these principles, while having no legal effect, risk leading to another cycle of instability. We therefore reiterate the importance of fully respecting Somalia's unity, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence. Support for secessionist entities within Somalia, which could destabilize the country and lead to a reversal of hard-won counterterrorism gains, is unacceptable and undermines current efforts for a peaceful resolution of the conflict. As is well known, the United Nations Transitional Assistance Mission in Somalia is currently delivering results in the second and final phase of its transition, with the aim of enabling Somalia to assume full responsibility for its own security. Initiatives that introduce unnecessary political turbulence into a country that has made tangible progress across the political, security, and humanitarian tracks run counter to these efforts and pose risks to regional stability. Beyond the internal dimension, the destabilization of Somalia carries a serious risk of spillover effect, potentially spreading instability across the Horn of Africa and beyond. In conclusion, Mr. President, Greece firmly believes that the situation is a matter that can only be addressed through dialogue with and through the legitimate and internationally recognized federal government of Somalia, in full accordance with international law and the United Nations Charter. I thank you.
The representative of the Russian Federation.
President, we thank Assistant Secretary General Khalid Kiari for his briefing. We, much like the majority of our Security Council colleagues, we are deeply concerned by Israel's politically motivated decision to recognize the independence of Somaliland. This decision is at odds with the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the unity of the Federal Republic of Somalia. We very much understand the well-founded reaction to this decision on the part of the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia, the African Union leadership, regional states, and Arab and Muslim countries. We are concerned by potential consequences, including about a potential escalation of tensions in the Horn of Africa and beyond. In principle, we are in favor of settling intra-Somalian contradictions on the basis of inclusive national dialogue without any external interference. We support Mogadishu's efforts to resolve security threats, to establish lasting peace, and to implement its sovereign priorities, factoring in the cultural and historical diversity of this multi-ethnic nation. We call on interests not to attempt to further their own geopolitical regions in the Horn of Africa region by capitalizing on the systemic problems of African states. We'd also like to emphasize that decisions akin to the one taken by the Israeli cabinet risk further complicating the efforts of Mogadishu and its partners' efforts to combat al-Shabaab terrorists. Colleagues, just last week, speaking in this very chamber on the topic of the vote on the Security Council resolution on AWESOM, the AU Support and Stabilization Mission in Somalia, members of this council spoke at length about the price that's been paid for these efforts. Above all, the price involved thousands of lives laid down by African peacekeepers, Somalian security forces and civilians. We cannot forget this. On a separate note, it's worth noting that current complex challenges we see in Somalia are, to a large extent, the consequences of the onerous legacy of the era of Western colonialism. The same can be said for other African states. I think it's an open secret to all in this chamber where the root causes of the majority of territorial disputes and inter-ethnic and interfaith contradictions in contemporary Africa lie. The Russian Federation and the USSR before it constantly spoke of this, both at the Security Council and at the General Assembly. Together with a wide array of like-minded countries, the Russian Federation continues to combat colonialism in all of its forms, first and foremost by helping to build a genuinely multipolar world based on equal and mutually beneficial interstate relations, free from diktats, free from external interference. Specifically, in December, the Group of Friends in Defense of the UN Charter submitted a resolution that was adopted by the General Assembly, a resolution proclaiming the 14th of December the International Day Against Colonialism. As the situation we're discussing today shows, Africa still needs such active national efforts aimed at anti-colonialism. We call on all sensible states interested in helping to build a genuinely independent and successful African development models to join us. in the anti-colonial context in relation to the situation in Somalia, it's also important to repeat our principled position. Voluntary financial assistance to Somalians is provided free of charge. It cannot be preconditioned on the fulfilling of political requirements. By way of conclusion, we'd like to express our solidarity with the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia and the Somalian people during this difficult period. Russia will continue supporting Mogadishu in combating both international terrorism as well as efforts to exert unilateral political and economic pressure. I thank you.
I thank the representative of...
At the outset, Greece wishes to underscore the fundamental importance of respect for international law and the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter. In view of the latest developments regarding the Federal Republic of Somalia, Greece expresses its grave concern and stresses the need to respect the unity, sovereignty, territorial integrity and political independence of the state in accordance with the UN Charter as well as of the Charter of the African Union. In this context, we recall that Security Council resolutions on Somalia adopted under Chapter 7 of the Charter, including most recently Resolution 2809 of 2025, explicitly reaffirm for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, political independence, and unity of Somalia. Any actions contrary to these principles, while having no legal effect, risk leading to another cycle of instability. We therefore reiterate the importance of fully respecting Somalia's unity, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence. Support for secessionist entities within Somalia, which could destabilize the country and lead to a reversal of hard-won counterterrorism gains, is unacceptable and undermines current efforts for a peaceful resolution of the conflict. As is well known, the United Nations Transitional Assistance Mission in Somalia is currently delivering results in the second and final phase of its transition, with the aim of enabling Somalia to assume full responsibility for its own security. Initiatives that introduce unnecessary political turbulence into a country that has made tangible progress across the political, security, and humanitarian tracks run counter to these efforts and pose risks to regional stability. Beyond the internal dimension, the destabilization of Somalia carries a serious risk of spillover effect, potentially spreading instability across the Horn of Africa and beyond. In conclusion, Mr. President, Greece firmly believes that the situation is a matter that can only be addressed through dialogue with and through the legitimate and internationally recognized federal government of Somalia, in full accordance with international law and the United Nations Charter. I thank you.
I thank the representative of China for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
We thank you for convening today's meeting at this critical moment for Somalia and the wider Horn of Africa region. I thank ASG Khalid Khiari for the briefing. At the outset, let me express Pakistan's unwavering and steadfast support to the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia. We strongly condemn the unilateral and unlawful recognition by Israel of the Somaliland region of the Federal Republic of Somalia. It is a direct assault on Somalia's internationally recognized borders and constitutes a flagrant violation of international law. The Somaliland region remains an integral, inseparable, and inalienable part of Somalia. No external actor has either the legal standing or the moral authority to alter that fundamental reality. A group of OIC countries, including Pakistan, has unequivocally rejected Israel's unlawful move, noting its serious repercussions for peace and security in the Horn of Africa, the Red Sea region, and international peace and security as a whole. The joint statement terms the recognition of parts of states, a violation of the cardinal principles of international law and the United Nations Charter. Mr. President, these developments are especially alarming at a time when Somalia is demonstrating encouraging and tangible progress on its political and institutional trajectory. The federal government of Somalia, under the forward-looking vision and leadership of President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, has made notable strides in national reconciliation, constitutional reform, and the revitalization of state institutions. Positive trends in the financial sector, particularly the efforts related to economic legislation and preparations for inclusive one-person, one-vote elections, represent important steps towards consolidating Somalia's democracy and stability. Similarly, the phased 2-year transition of the United Nations presence in Somalia is progressing smoothly. The handover of responsibilities under the first phase of the United Nations Transitional Assistance Mission in Somalia has been completed, and the roadmap for the second and final phase has been finalized, with the mission scheduled to cease operations on 31st October 2026. These gains reflect a Somali-owned, Somali-led trajectory towards political reconciliation and state building. This positive momentum must be protected and reinforced, not undermined by actions that risk fragmenting the country and reversing hard-won progress. Pakistan also acknowledges the sacrifices and resilience of the Somali people and its security forces, supported by UN-AU missions in confronting the persistent threat posed by Al-Shabaab and its affiliates. Continued predictable support for Somalia's security sector and stabilization efforts remain indispensable for preserving the hard-won gains against terrorism. Therefore, at this pivotal juncture, when Somalia is focused on defeating extremism, any action that diverts attention, weakens cohesion, or fuels division is profoundly irresponsible. Mr. President, against the backdrop of Israel's previous references to Somaliland of the Federal Republic of Somalia as a destination for the deportation of Palestinian people, especially from Gaza, its unlawful recognition of Somaliland region of Somalia is deeply troubling. For decades, Israel's dispossession and occupation of Palestinian land have been a central source of instability and conflict in the Middle East. It is now exporting this destabilizing conduct to the Horn of Africa, with serious implications for regional peace and security. Pakistan unequivocally rejects any proposals or plans aimed at the forced displacement of Palestinians. Security Council Resolution 2803 endorsed President Trump's comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict, which unequivocally states, I quote, "No one will be forced to leave Gaza," unquote. Any actions that advocate or imply displacement or resettlement not only violate international law, but also undermine the prospect of a just and lasting peace. We reaffirm our steadfast support for the Palestinian people in their legitimate struggle for self-determination. The only path to lasting peace and stability lies in the realization of an independent, contiguous, and sovereign state of Palestine on pre-1967 borders, with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital. In conclusion, Mr. President, Pakistan calls upon the Security Council and the broader international community to speak with one voice and reject all actions that undermine Somalia's unity and territorial integrity. On our part, we remain firmly and resolutely committed to standing with the government and people of Somalia in the country's march towards peace and prosperity. I thank you.
Mr. President, thank you for convening this meeting at a time when the principles of international order are once again openly challenged. We also thank ASG Chiari for his briefing. Following up on the joint statement issued on 26 December by the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of a broad group of countries, including Turkey, as well as the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, I will make 3 points today. First, Turkey firmly rejects Israel's announcement, which constitutes a clear and serious violation of international law and the Charter of the UN. Unilateral recognition of a region that is a part of a sovereign UN member state directly undermines principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and non-interference. This announcement constitutes another example of the Netanyahu government's unlawful actions aimed at creating instability at both regional and global level. Such conduct cannot be normalized, ignored, or can be excused. Secondly, this announcement sets a dangerous precedent with far-reaching consequences. Undermining sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia, a UN member state, is a blatant threat to international peace and security and risks encouraging fragmentation and instability, particularly in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea. Moreover, this step by Israel, who persists its expansionist policies and which spares no effort to prevent recognition of the state of Palestine, amounts to an explicit intervention in Somalia's internal affairs. Decisions regarding the future of the Federal Republic of Somalia and the Somaliland region should and will be taken by the Somalis alone. Thirdly, Turkey reiterates its full and unwavering support for the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia over its entire territory. We reject any measures aimed at undermining Somalia's unity or weakening its internationally recognized borders, as well as its focus and efforts to combat Al-Shabaab terrorism, which we support. We also reject any attempts to link this step to broader agendas that violate international law, including efforts aimed at the forcible displacement of the Palestinian people from their land, which are unacceptable in principle and must be rejected in all its forms. Mr. President, Turkey remains firmly committed to peace and stability in the Horn of Africa. We will continue to stand by the federal government and the people of Somalia and work relentlessly with regional and international partners towards this end. In this context, we expect the Security Council to uphold its responsibilities under the UN Charter and to respond clearly to actions that threaten the sovereignty of a UN member state, as well as international peace and security. We also call on all UN member states to explicitly reject Israel's announcement recognizing the independence of the Somaliland region of the Federal Republic of Somalia. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Turkey to the representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I would like to commend Slovenia for its effective stewardship of the Council during the month of December. I also thank ASG Kerry for the informative briefing provided today. The Security Council adopted this month of 2 resolutions concerning Somalia, namely the extension of a mandate of the African Union Support and Civilization Mission and sanctions against Al-Shabaab. And this 2 resolution reflects the international community's continued commitments to peace and security in Somalia. However, the recent diplomatic developments related to Somalia warrant close attention as they carry broader implications for regional stability and for the principles that underpin our collective efforts. In this context, we believe it is important to continue engaging with all relevant parties in a manner that respect sovereignty, support dialogue, and contribute to practical cooperation in addressing shared challenges. I'd like to make 3 points. First, the Republic of Korea reiterates its firm support for the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia, in accordance with the principles of the United Nations Charter. Our respect for Somalia's sovereignty necessarily entails full recognition of its internationally recognized borders, which remain essential to ensuring clarity, predictability, and stability in regional relations. Accordingly, we support the authority of the federal government of Somalia as exercised within its internationally recognized borders and in accordance with Somali constitution. Second, we recognize the value of efforts aimed at strengthening bilateral and regional relations, including initiatives that promote dialogue and confidence building between Israel and its neighbors. However, we believe that such efforts, in order to be constructive and sustainable, must be pursued in full respect of the sovereignty of the state concerned and in a way that supports rather than undermines ongoing dialogues among Somali stakeholders. Third, we encourage relevant Somali stakeholders to actively engage in good faith dialogue to address different views related to governance arrangements and the exercise of authority, including questions concerning territorial integrity and respective roles of federal and regional institutions. As reflected in recently adopted Security Council resolutions, all Somali parties share responsibility for strengthening cooperation and engaging in discussions for the benefit of all Somalis. Coordinated efforts remain essential for fostering mutual understanding, strengthening national cohesion, and advancing an inclusive political process that supports Somali's national priorities. We also acknowledge the important role played by the UN and regional partners in supporting the peaceful resolution of disputes related to Somalia and promoting its peace and stability. Mr. President, as our term on the Security Council comes to an end, this may be our final interventions in this chamber. Nevertheless, the Republic of Korea's commitment to peace, stability, and security in Somalia and beyond remains unwavering. We will continue to support the work of the UN and its partners in advancing these shared objectives. In this spirit, we again extend our best wishes to the incoming members of the Security Council, Bahrain, Colombia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Latvia, and Liberia, as they assume their important responsibilities. I thank you.
Mr. President, I'd like to begin by thanking the Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Khaled Kiari, for that briefing. France recalls its commitment to the unity, territorial integrity, and the sovereignty of Somalia in accordance with the United Nations Charter. France welcomes the recent renewals of the sanctions regime targeting the terrorist group Al-Shabaab and the mandates of the African Union Support and Stabilization Mission, as well as the UN Support Office in Somalia. This represents decisive support provided by this Council to Somalia in its quest for security and stability. It's essential to avoid any action liable of compromising peace and security in Somalia, as well as in the Horn of Africa and the Gulf of Aden. Internal disputes within Somalia must be resolved in a negotiated manner in the context of a dialogue between all Somali stakeholders. Easing of political tensions within the country is crucial to effectively counter terrorism and to enable the smooth conduct of future elections. Mr. President, I wish to recall in conclusion that, faithful to the spirit of the New York Declaration adopted by the General Assembly on the 12th of September this year, France will continue to stand opposed to any forced displacement of the civilian population and to any violation of international law and international humanitarian law in particular. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France statement in my capacity as the representative of Slovenia. I would like to thank Assistant Secretary General Chiari for his briefing. For 2 years at this table, we have been unambiguous in opposing two threats to international order and global security: the erosion of multilateralism and the disregard for international law. Colleagues, foreign interference does not arrive only with tanks and missiles. It also takes quieter but no less damaging forms: political pressure and actions that undermine sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence. These principles are not abstract. They are being tested today. It is in this context that we express our deep concern regarding the action taken against Somalia last week. It risks further destabilizing a region already burdened by multiple political and security crises. Slovenia reiterates its support for the unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia. Only Somalis themselves can determine the future of their country, free from unwarranted external interference. It is up to Somalis of Somalia and of Somaliland to agree in dialogue on a system of governance that protects the interests of all parts of Somalia. Efforts of the international community should be directed towards supporting meaningful dialogue between Somalia and Somaliland. We encourage the United Nations, the African Union, and regional organizations to offer their support in this regard, should Somalis desire it. Colleagues, the current situation must not distract from Somalia's urgent security priorities, including the fight against terrorism. The international community should work together with Somalia, supporting its efforts through cooperation and sustained engagement. Colleagues, I have to address the issue of Palestine and comparison as raised by the United States. Slovenia recognized Palestine as an independent state. We did so in response to the undeniable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. Palestine is not part of any state. It is a legally occupied territory, as declared by the International Court of Justice, among others. Palestine is also an observer state in this organization. Somaliland, on the other hand, is a part of a UN member state, and recognizing it goes against the Article 2, Para 4 of the UN Charter. Colleagues, throughout our tenure, we have consistently called for peace, not as an empty slogan, but as a responsibility. And we have worked to cultivate that notion through leadership for peace debates. To lead for peace is to place the pursuit of sustainable peace above narrow national interest, to choose cooperation over convenience. It is to recognize that sustainable peace is achieved not outside of, but through the United Nations itself. The United Nations is only as strong as the commitment of its member states. And for this reason, what the organization needs today is a mobilization of all of us, of its member states, for an alliance for peace. I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
For his briefing here this afternoon.
At the outset, Djibouti wishes to reiterate its gratitude to Slovenia for convening this urgent meeting on a matter of profound consequence for international peace and security and for the stability of our region, the Horn of Africa. I want to thank ASG Khalid Ghayari for his briefing. Djibouti fully aligns with the statement by the A3. It also endorses the many important statements by the AU, IGAD, the Arab League, and the OIC, as well as the 21 countries in the region and beyond, have condemned the actions by Israel, which took the unilateral decision to recognize the breakaway region, the so-called Republic of Somaliland. This decision is in direct violation of established international norms and legal principles. These norms are embedded in the founding text of the African Union and its constitutive act, which has the stated objective of defending the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence of its member states. Respect for another state's sovereignty and territorial integrity is an essential principle of the UN Charter. Accordingly, the UN Security Council has insisted in its resolutions on respect for Somalia's territorial integrity and unity. Today, Israel's reckless decision undermines these principles, defiantly violates the UN Charter, arrogantly challenges the authority of this Council as it is wont to do and threatens the foundation of the international legal order. It amounts to intervention in Somalia's affairs insofar as this action fosters the independence of Somaliland and the breakup of Somalia. It constitutes an unlawful transgression of the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the political independence of the Federal Republic of Somalia, of which Somaliland is a constituent part. It sets an extremely dangerous precedent and encourages further fragmentation. Mr. President, such unilateral actions risks inflaming tensions within Somalia and across the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea, emboldening armed groups, bolstering terrorist groups, and unraveling the hard-won gains of the United Nations, the African Union, and the Somali government in our collective efforts to promote peace, security, and stability in the country. In this regard, this Council should take very serious note of the analysis made by the Somali government on the potential security ramifications of the destructive move by Israel in its press release dated December the 26th, 2025, as well as the various declarations made by concerned countries and organizations in the region and beyond. We also take note of the federal government's decision to reject the forced relocation of Palestinians in Somalia, as this is a crime under international law. By virtue of its sovereignty, Somalia enjoys the full range of sovereign powers of its territory and the activities taking place therein.
Congratulate the Republic of Slovenia on the success you have achieved as President of the Council during the month of December. We thank the Presidency for swiftly responding to the request of convening this important meeting, request made by the A3+1 and supported by China, Pakistan, and the Russian Federation. We also thank Mr. Khaled Khiari, ASG, for his informative briefing. We fully agree with the joint statement by the A3+ delivered by Ambassador Othman, the permanent representative of the Federal Republic of Somalia. Mr. President, the African Union expresses grave concern over the latest developments in Somaliland. In this context, the African Union unequivocally underscores its firm position that is based on the principles of the AU enshrined in Article 4 of its charter. This article stresses very clearly the importance of respecting the inviolability of borders after independence. The AU categorically rejects any initiative, any measure that aims to recognize Somaliland as an independent entity. Somaliland remains an integral part of the Federal Republic of Somalia. Any attempt to undermine the unity of Somalia, to undermine the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Somalia, is inconsistent with the main principles of the African Union. Such acts threaten to set a precedent with grave repercussions on peace and stability in Africa. The African Union expresses its grave concern over measures that are inconsistent with international unanimity, that are inconsistent with the principles of international law. Full respect of the United Nations Charter requires the full recognition of the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people to establish their independent states. That is recognized by the vast majority of United Nations member states. Rather than taking unprecedented steps, unprecedented provocative steps towards a region in the African continent. Once again, we reiterate the commitment, the historical commitment by Africa to the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including the right to self-determination, the right to establish its independent state with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital. Mr. President, we reiterate the commitment of the African Union to the unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Somalia. And we reiterate our full support to the efforts by Somali authorities to consolidate peace, to strengthen state institutions. The African Union will continue to stand with determination alongside Somalia in its efforts to consolidate sovereignty, peace, and sustainable development. I thank you for your attention.
Nice words addressed to my delegation. The representative of Sierra Leone has asked for the floor to make further statement. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank you for the opportunity to say a few words on behalf of my delegation, as this may be the final formal meeting of the year, and as Sierra Leone concludes its tenure on the Security Council. Allow me to firstly extend sincere appreciation to you, Mr. President, and the delegation of Slovenia for a successful presidency and for your steady and professional manner in which you've guided the work of the Council this month. As an elected member of the Council by the General Assembly for the 2024-2025 biennium, Sierra Leone places on record its firm conviction that we've endeavored conscientiously and resolutely to discharge our responsibility in line with international law, faithful fulfillment of the UN Charter. Throughout, we have sought to build bridges through partnership, anchored in principles, guided by pragmatism, and driven by the Council's responsibility to maintain international peace and security. We've also endeavored at all times to uphold the solemn responsibilities set out in the UN Charter. The Council acts on behalf of the entire membership of the United Nations. In that spirit, we're grateful to colleagues across the membership who've described Sierra Leone's contribution as one marked by moral authority and strategic clarity, anchored in the defense of international law, justice, and our shared humanity. Let me also renew our thanks to all members of the Council, permanent and elected, for the solid cooperation during this demanding period. We extend particular appreciation to our fellow A3+ members and to the wider E10 for the solidarity and collaboration. We particularly express deep appreciation to the outgoing members, the class of 2025, Algeria, Guyana, the Republic of Korea, and Slovenia, for the partnership, solidarity, and the commitment shown in navigating a complex and contested period. We also warmly congratulate the incoming members, Bahrain, Colombia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Latvia, and Liberia, and extend our best wishes for a successful and impactful tenure. To Somalia, the incoming President of the Council, we convey our best wishes for a smooth and successful presidency. The monthly rotation of the Council's presidency remains one of the clearest expressions of the sovereign equality of states enshrined in the UN Charter. The Council's rotational presidency is a valued-based institution that must be respected and safeguarded. I also express Sierra Leone's profound gratitude to colleagues in the UN Secretariat for their professionalism and certainly steadfast support throughout our tenure. In particular, we thank the Security Council Affairs Division, SCAD, and all Secretariat colleagues, from conference officers, interpreters, translators, and the technical teams, to safety and security personnel, whose dedication ensured that the Council's work could proceed, often under intense pressure, and whose quiet excellence underpinned every meeting. I also wish to place on record a special acknowledgement of the dedication and commitment and work of the diplomats of the Permanent Mission of Sierra Leone, whose professionalism and sacrifice over the past 2 years contributed meaningfully to the Council's work in service of peace. Mr. President, on the important topic of consideration in this meeting, so I will reiterate once more the clear position expressed by the A3 Plus in the statement delivered by the Permanent Representative of Somalia, affirming unequivocally the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia. These are not optional ideals. They are foundational obligations under the UN Charter and the bedrock of Africa's stability and international peace and security. Yet this matter again demonstrates a deeply troubling reality. Fundamental principles of the Charter are being disregarded, and the Council risks being drawn into a period marked by blatant disrespect for international law and an environment that can be perceived as enabling impunity. So it underscores our firm belief with clarity that this seeming era of impunity is a blight on our collective security system, and it will not endure. Accountability, legal, political, and moral, will ultimately put an end to any illusion of impunity, as the alternative cannot be a reset, but an erosion of a very framework built to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, or from hell, as aptly said by former UN Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld. Finally, Sierra leaves this Council with a deepened conviction that a reform of the Security Council is not merely desirable, but imperative. The historical injustice against Africa must be redressed fully and without further delay if this Council is to retain legitimacy, credibility, and effectiveness. Until that reform is realized, Sierra Leone encourages all members to uphold the heightened responsibility entrusted to this Council, to act with restraint, fidelity to the Charter, and an unwavering commitment to international law, so that 2026 and beyond may be more stable and peaceful. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Sierra Leone for the statement.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the Arab Group. The group expresses its deep appreciation for the convening of this meeting in light of a grave development that undermines fundamental principles of international law and threatens peace and security in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea region, with negative repercussions for international peace and security. Mr. President, the Arab Group firmly rejects and strongly condemns the declaration issued by Israel on 26 December 2025, recognizing what is referred to as the Somaliland region, which lies within the sovereign territory of the Federal Republic of Somalia. The group considers this declaration as an illegal and null and void unilateral act that carries no legal effect, as it constitutes a blatant violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Somalia and a flagrant breach of international law and the Charter of the United Nations. The Arab Group stresses that the northwestern region of Somalia is an integral part of its sovereign territory. Any attempt to recognize separation, whether directly or indirectly, sets a dangerous precedent that undermines established principles of the international system, threatens regional and international peace and security, and exacerbates political tensions in Somalia, the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and the Horn of Africa. Mr. President, the Arab Group views this unlawful Israeli recognition as part of a dangerous attempt to reshape the geopolitical map of the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden region of the Somali coast. It constitutes a direct threat to regional and international peace and security, and to the freedom of navigation and international trade, which requires a clear and firm response from the international community. In this regard, the Arab Group reaffirms its full support for the security, stability, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia by land, sea, and air, its legitimate institutions, and its right to defend its territory in accordance with Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations. The group categorically rejects any use of Somali territory, any part thereof, as a platform for hostile or intelligence activities that could undermine the security or stability of other states. The Arab Group also reiterates its categorical rejection of any form of displacement of the Palestinian people from their land and any attempts to alter the demographic composition of the occupied Palestinian territory. It firmly rejects its responsibilities under Articles 34 and 39 of the Charter of the United Nations, and to take a firm and the Red Sea region and preserve the regional and international peace and security. In conclusion, Mr. President, the Arab Group reiterates unequivocally that the sovereignty, unity, and the territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia are not subject to discussion or compromise. Any infringement upon them under any pretext or guise constitutes a flagrant violation of international law and the Charter of the UN, and a direct threat to regional and international peace and security. The Arab Group categorically and legally rejects and politically rejects any attempt to impose a new fait accompli in Somalia, redraw its geographic or political map, or engage with any entity outside the framework of Somalia's legitimate state institutions. The Arab Group will continue to stand firmly and fully alongside Somalia, the Federal Republic of Somalia, supporting its security, stability, and territorial integrity by land, sea, and air, and assisting it in all legitimate measures taken under international law to defend its sovereignty. The group also calls upon the international community, foremost the Security Council, to assume its full responsibility and take the necessary clear and firm positions to prevent any action undermining of Somali sovereignty or the creation of new conflict hotspots in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea region, in order to safeguard regional and international peace and security and uphold the principle of respect for state sovereignty and territorial integrity as a cornerstone of the international order. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Kuwait for the statement, and His Excellency Mr. Majed Abdelaziz, a permanent observer of the Permanent Mission of the League of Arab States to the UN.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. سيد الرئيس اسمحوا لي بداية.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, allow me at the outset to express the League of Arab States' appreciation for your distinguished presidency of the Council's work during December, a month that coincides with the conclusion of your 2-year term as a non-permanent member of the Council, in addition to 4 other non-permanent members, including Algeria. Your membership has been marked by credibility, constructive and objective engagement, and a highly professional and responsive approach to global events. You have strived to uphold the Council's role in maintaining international peace and security despite unfavorable global circumstances. I thank you all, and we welcome the new 5 members of the Council, and we wish you all success. I highly appreciate the excellent briefing delivered by Mr. Khaled Kiari, Assistant Secretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs. I align myself with the statement of the State of Kuwait in its capacity as Chair of the Arab Group for December. Mr. President, The League of Arab States strongly supported the request by the A3+, backed by other members, to convene this meeting at the earliest possible opportunity to address a grave development that strikes at the core of the international legal order established by the UN Charter in on respect for the sovereignty, unity and territorial integrity of states. International reactions reflect a unanimous rejection and condemnation of Israel, the power-occupying Palestinian territory and Syrian and Lebanese Arab lands, for seeking to legitimize the secessionist aspirations of the northwestern region of Somalia, known as Somaliland, which seeks to separate from the Federal Republic of Somalia. Israel aims to use this as a pretext for an illegal presence on Arab African Somali soil to advance well-known political, security and economic agendas that are unacceptable and condemned. These actions flagrantly violate the United Nations Charter and the constitutive instruments of both the African Union and the League of Arab States. Most dangerously, they facilitate plans for the forced displacement of the Palestinian people and the exploitation of northern Somali ports for the establishment of military bases. This was made abundantly clear in the statement by the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, His Excellency Ahmed Abul Gheit, who condemned this Israeli move as an affront to the unity of the Federal Republic of Somalia, a member of the Arab League. He stressed the League's categorical rejection of this act as a violation of international law and an assault of fundamental legal principles, including respect for state sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, principles that form the cornerstone of the UN Charter and international law. As the Secretary General emphasized, this Israeli action, the occupying power, constitutes yet another breach of international resolutions and international instruments, posing a direct threat to an Arab League member state, destabilizing the Horn of Africa, the Red Sea, and the Gulf of Aden, and gravely undermining Arab regional security, which is interconnected and cannot withstand reckless political ventures or delusional expansionist ambitions that are categorically rejected. Mr. President, in this context, the statement issued yesterday by the Council of the League of Arab States at its extraordinary meeting at the level of permanent representatives in Cairo yesterday, Sunday, 28th of December. So the statement sets out the parameters of the Arab position, which I will summarize. First, we condemn in the strongest terms Israel's recognition of the secession of Somalia's northwestern region, known as Somaliland, in pursuit of political, security and economic agendas that we categorically reject. We also fully reject any measures arising from this illegitimate recognition aimed at facilitating forced displacement of the Palestinian people or exploiting northern Somali ports to establish military bases. Second, we reaffirm the Arab League's consistent and clear position, as reflected in its resolutions at all levels, that the northwestern region of Somalia, known as Somaliland, is an integral part of the Federal Republic of Somalia, based on the League's charter, the principles of the League's charter, based on the UN Charter, and the charters of all organizations of which Somalia is a member. We reject any attempt to recognize this secession directly or indirectly. Third, we assert that this unlawful Israeli recognition is part of Israel's broader attempts of the occupying power to undermine international peace and security and undermine Arab national security, warranting legal, economic, political, and diplomatic measures to confront it. Fourth, we affirm support for Somalia's security, stability, unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. We support the federal government of Somalia in its efforts to safeguard Somali's sovereignty by land, sea, and air. We reaffirm Somalia's rights to legitimate self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter and relevant provisions of the Arab League Charter. We support the federal government of Somalia in any measures it decides to take to repel aggression within the framework of international legitimacy. Fifth, we express our full support and solidarity with the position of the state of Somalia that any act recognizing the secession of its northwestern region is null, void, and unacceptable. It constitutes a blatant violation of international law. It represents a flagrant interference in Somalia's internal affairs, and it undermines Somalia's sovereignty and territorial integrity. With grave implications for regional peace and security, it heightens political tensions in Somalia, the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and the Horn of Africa. Sixth, we consider Israeli moves as a dangerous attempt to reshape the geopolitical map of the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea off Somalia's coast. We call on the international community to confront these actions as threats to regional and international peace and security, and to freedom of navigation and global trade. Seventh, we categorically reject any form of forcible displacement of the Palestinian people from their state or attempt to alter the demographic composition of Palestine, as such acts are forms of the crime of genocide and grave breaches of international law and international resolutions. They undermine efforts to achieve a just and lasting peace and comprehensive peace. In this context, we reject the use of Somali territory to implement these aggressive Israeli schemes. Eighth, we categorically reject the use of any part of Somalia's territory by external actors as a platform for hostile or intelligence activities targeting other states or undermining their security and stability. Ninth, we are ready to mobilize the necessary support for Somalia's government to ensure the adoption of UN resolutions affirming Somalia's unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, and rejecting Israel's recognition as null and void and deeming it as a threat to international peace and security. Tenth, we urge all states and international and regional organizations to refrain from any official or semi-official dealings with the authorities of Somalia's northwestern region, Somaliland, outside the framework of Somali sovereignty. We affirm that any infringement of Somalia's territorial integrity constitutes a hostile act against the Somali state and Arab and African states. It violates international law. Perpetrators of such acts will be held fully accountable under international law. The Arab League Secretariat, in close coordination with the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia, the AU Commission, and the UN Secretariat, will work to counter Israel's recognition of Somalia's northwestern region, Somaliland, threat to international peace and security under Articles 34 and 39 of the UN Charter. We will take all necessary measures to prevent the creation of new hotspots in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea, while ensuring political and security, political stability and safeguarding Somalia's unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. In conclusion, Mr. President, it is imperative to treat this Israeli step as a threat to regional and international peace and security, and to compel Israel, the occupying power, to immediately revoke this decision, which constitutes a flagrant violation of international resolutions and the principles of multilateral relations. The League of Arab States also underscores the special responsibility of the Security Council to enforce respect for the Charter and international law, and to compel Israel to revoke immediately this recognition and to intensify global and regional efforts to achieve a comprehensive settlement of the Somali question and restore peace and stability in the framework of full respect of international law and international legitimacy. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the His Excellency Mr. Abdelaziz.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I would like to thank you for having accepted to hold this meeting at short notice at such a critical time. And I would like to reaffirm that today Egypt is taking part in this meeting because we have deep historical ties with Somalia. Indeed, Egypt was among the first states to recognize Somalia's independence in 1960, and since that time, Egypt has always supported stability in Somalia. We remember with great pride the sacrifices of our martyrs who gave their lives in defending the independence and territorial integrity of Somalia, which really is the embodiment of the bonds of brotherhood and common destiny that link together our two peoples. While the Somali state is moving forward to building its national institutions, and as the Somali state continues to fight the unjust terrorism, and as it continues to shape its future to turn a page on the past, Somalia now finds itself facing a new challenge today, namely Israel's recognition of the region termed Somaliland. This is a very serious precedent and a blatant violation of the principles of international law and the United Nations Charter, and is a direct assault on the sovereignty, unity and territorial integrity of Somalia. The recognition of the independence of parts of the territory of a sovereign state is not only an infringement of that country's sovereignty, it's also a direct threat to international peace and security. And it clearly contradicts the well-established principles of international law and the foundations of the African Union. The founding fathers of the Organization of African Unity were wise in scrupulously respecting the borders inherited from the colonial era, and they did this in order to avert any conflict in the region and to preserve the political and social fabric of the African continent. And this also helped to strengthen regional cooperation rather than sowing the seeds of further division. In line with the joint statement of 21 Arab, African and Islamic states, and in accordance with the statement of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the Gulf Cooperation Council, and also in line with the declaration made by the observer of the League of Arab States and the representative of the African Union, Egypt, for its part, has unequivocally refused to recognize Israel's recognition of what is called the Somaliland region. We have condemned this measure because it's a direct violation of the sovereignty, unity and territorial integrity of Somalia. This measure also is a serious risk for peace and security in the Horn of Africa and to the Red Sea region, which is a natural extension of Egyptian national security. This solidarity reflects the nature and scope of the international rejection of Israel's move, and we believe that the number of states and organizations opposing this in coming days will continue. grow, because this decision risks fueling similar tendencies and practices in other regions of the world. Egypt therefore calls upon this esteemed Council to unite in rejecting and condemning this Israeli action, which will undoubtedly have serious repercussions for peace, security, stability and safety of millions of African and Arab peoples in East Africa and the Horn of Africa, especially since this measure coincides with sincere regional and national efforts to resolve any outstanding inter-Somalian issues. Mr. President, during the current month, your Council has made commendable efforts led by the United Kingdom to reaffirm support for Somalia by renewing the sanctions regime imposed on al-Shabaab and also extending the mandate of the African Union mission in Somalia. You also supported efforts to strengthen the capacities of the Somali state, and you also backed national reconstruction and development endeavors in Somalia. Unfortunately, this unilateral Israeli move undermines this collective constructive effort and contradicts the foundations upon which the Council's approach is based. And this has been the case now for years, even decades. An approach confirming the unity of Somalia over all of its territory. Instead of focusing our efforts on encouraging the Somali government to exert further efforts aimed at consolidating the pillars of stability and move toward the path of reconciliation and greater political participation, unfortunately, regrettably, we have to focus today on the repercussions of these unilateral Israeli actions that undermine these efforts. Measures which threaten the political process that your Council has consistently called for, and destabilizing the region and risking dragging Somalia into regional confrontations, whereas Somalia is not a direct party to those confrontations. Mr. President, the security and stability of Somalia is an extension of the security and stability of Egypt, and that's why Egypt believes that any move likely to fuel unrest in Somalia will not only have repercussions within Somalia itself, but will also threaten the region, creating uncertainty and instability. This will also embolden terrorist organizations, foremost among them al-Shabaab. They will use the current situation to expand their terrorist activities, thereby posing a real threat to regional and international peace and security. In conclusion, Mr. President, I'd like to reaffirm that your Council assume the responsibility to work against this unilateral Israeli move. It's not only about preserving the credibility of the Council's handling of the Somali file for years now, it's also an issue of upholding the role of the Council in safeguarding the principles that are at the core of the UN Charter and the international rules-based order. We look forward to this Council sending out a clear and unambiguous message to reaffirm the unity and sovereignty of Somalia. There can be no manipulation whatever the message used. A message that will reject any attempt to undermine the sovereignty of Somalia. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Egypt for the statement. I now give the floor